Hello and welcome. You're watching Global Lens and I'm Parikshit Luthra. US President Donald Trump's 50% tariffs on India came into effect this week. The move is expected to impact nearly $50 billion worth of exports, mostly from labor-intensive sectors. The US also ramped up the rhetoric on India. Earlier this week, trade advisor Peter Navarro termed Indian negotiators arrogant and dubbed Russia's Ukraine invasion as Modi's war. Later, in an extensive post on social media, Navarro highlighted that the 50% tariffs are also aimed at cutting off the financial lifeline India has extended to Putin's war machine. Navarro's statement came even as data sourced from Kepler shows that China remained the biggest buyer of Russian oil in August. It bought nearly 2 million barrels of Russian oil per day. India stood second, Turkey was at number 3, and Syria at number 4, followed by Azerbaijan. However, only India has been penalized. How does this damage the larger India-US partnership? Does penalizing India really help Trump in ending the Russia-Ukraine war? Joining us now to discuss all of this is Kenneth Rogoff, American economist and professor at Harvard University. Professor Rogoff, always a pleasure having you here on CNBC-TV18. Now, let me straight away begin by asking you about what Peter Navarro, the White House senior advisor on trade and manufacturing, had to say about India. He said that President Trump's 50% tariffs on Indian imports are now in effect. This isn't just about India's unfair trade. It's about cutting off the financial lifeline India has extended to Putin's war machine. Is coercing India going to help US in any way?
It's a very difficult question. I mean, the US-India relationship is incredibly important. And, it's hard to interpret what he's doing. I'm going to use a chess analogy where Trump is playing a gambit. India is the piece being sacrificed in order to achieve a larger end. He believes that it will work. He believes he can repay India with interest, but it's very risky, clearly, in terms of the relationship. That's why it hasn't happened. That said, obviously, India itself has very high tariffs. India and Brazil are the two highest tariff countries until the United States walked in. And India has been buying the Russian oil, and it's been going on for a long time. And I think almost no matter who is president, this issue would have been confronted. Now, you ask why India? I'm at Harvard University. I don't know how you've been following, but President Trump's been punishing us brutally. He hasn't been punishing Princeton. He hasn't been punishing Yale. He's been punishing Harvard. It's easier for him to laser in on one organization and show what he can do. So certainly as one object of his attack to another, I'm in deep sympathy with you.
Right. But does this help him in ending the Ukraine war in any way? Because you've got China, which continues to buy Russian oil. You've got other countries like Turkey, which buy Russian oil and gas as well.
Well, I think it's a move in a longer game, to get back to my analogy. And I assume that, at least he's hoping everyone will think he'll follow it with more. Turkey is an example of a country which is not only buying Russia's oil, but has been a conduit for goods from Europe to go to Russia without that are not supposed to, where marketers have closed down, but they can buy the goods from Turkey. I mean, also other countries, Kazakhstan, Azerbaijan, others. So no, this alone is not going to do it. China can just buy the oil that India has been buying. They can probably pay a bigger discount. No, this isn't a solution. It's very tough to be caught in the middle. I think at Harvard, there are some things that were wrong that certainly the diversity, equity, and inclusion maybe went too far. Anti-Semitism was a problem, but it is in many places. And he's hitting us very hard. And India certainly, has high tariffs, as Trump has noted, and India has been buying Russian oil, and it does help them keep their war machine going. So this is part of a larger game. And again, I think what Trump believes is that he can fix the India relations once he's solved the Russia war. I'm not saying that as someone who's advising him to do this, but that's my guess as to what their thinking is.
Right. Let me also ask you about another point that Peter Navarro made. He said that we can set aside the 25% additional tariff on India the day India stops buying Russian oil. But what would be the consequences of that? If tomorrow India does go ahead and stop that, could that not lead to a spike in oil prices? Will this stop other nations from doing so?
Well, the whole idea is to stop other nations from doing so. Again, I'm not a strategist in the Trump White House, but this is a step that the U.S. hasn't taken. There haven't been secondary sanctions. There haven't been sanctions against countries that are, in the U.S.'s mind, obeying the sanctions. Now, I have to say, one thing where the Trump White House maybe doesn't have a good vision is the importance of alliances. The United States needs alliances. India is extremely important. Of course, it's the fastest growing large country. Many U.S. firms are speaking of moving their business to India, moving their production to India in the future. India is going to take up a lot of the slack that's lost by cordoning off China. And certainly what Trump is doing to India in the short run benefits China. Again, I'm the last person in the world to describe Trump as playing 4D chess. I think it's a description he likes to have of himself. But I do think this is part of a larger game. You know, we'll see what happens of how this unfolds. It's far from over, and I am worried that this is going to last a long time. Right.
Does U.S. stand to gain at all by damaging the partnership with India?
Look, I think it's a very risky strategy. It's very concerning. India is certainly, a democratic country. It's a large growing economy. It is a very important partner to the United States. The relationship is enormously important. I don't know what to say. I mean, I can't read Trump's mind, predict, everything he's going to do. I don't know that it will be effective. We'll find out. There are people who think that Putin agreed to start at least talking again because of the threat against Russian oil through India. But it's very speculative. On the other hand, the situation in Ukraine's very concerning. The war is nowhere near over. Putin doesn't seem willing to give in. That is a dangerous, unstable situation, which, ultimately could come back and hurt India as well. So Trump's taking a risky move. Is it absolutely stupid? No, not necessarily. But on the other hand, it's very risky in terms of this extremely important relationship. Maybe he should have gone after China.
Right. Maybe he should have gone after China. You said that in the interim, because of Donald Trump's policies and 50% tariffs on India, China is going to benefit. In the next few months, what is the realignment and benefits to China that you see?
Well, first of all, they may be buying, getting some business India doesn't get. But I think in the next few months, it's not where they benefit. It's in terms of making alliances. He's helping patch the relationship between India and China. Countries that see the United States as punishing them are naturally going to move towards China to counterbalance. That's how great power politics works. Smaller nations or nations that aren't the driving military powers play the alliance, the other military powers off each other. India has been doing that, very knowledgeably for many, many years. And of course, India is going to do that. Turkey is going to do that. Syria is going to do that. Everyone's going to do that. Trump thinks he has the cards. He thinks he's going to get his way. We'll find out.
Right. I would also like to ask you about the impact on the Indian economy. Currently, according to estimates, 0.4 or 0.5% of India's GDP growth could be impacted. What will be the impact on India in the medium and long term if the tariffs stay at this level? And do you feel, Professor Rogoff, that tariffs will stay at 50% or will they come down at some point?
No, I don't think they'll stay at 50%. That this is almost a wartime footing. I think we're going to come off of it. Some agreement's going to be reached. I mean, the thing, frankly, that India could offer, where it would help itself, is India has had a very difficult time bringing down its tariffs. They've actually been steadily coming down. They're much lower than they were a couple decades ago, but they're still very high by world standards. And maybe India can find some way to politically to make use of this to bring down tariff levels, which the country that puts on the tariffs lose the most. The United States loses a lot. American consumers will get inferior goods. They'll pay more. Tariff policy is first and foremost punishing the nation that puts on the tariffs. I think I would say the same thing about India's tariffs. So again, Trump believes that he's accomplishing a greater good and people will forgive him for this.
Right. I would also like to ask you about the resilience of the U.S. economy. The U.S. economy grew 3.3% in the second quarter, but we have seen private investment also slowing down. What impact do you feel the tariffs will have on the U.S. economy over the next 3 years of the Trump administration? Will the economy continue to show resilience and growth?
Well, of course, there are other forces at work besides the tariffs. The AI revolutions in the United States, there's a lot of energy around that. But the tariffs hurt the United States. I don't think there's any doubt about it. They also undermine the dollar. If it's hard to get your money in and out, any country which has a lot of tariffs, it's much harder to be a reliable, safe currency. The United States no longer is what it was. I've written a lot about this, and I think Trump takes for granted that everyone's going to, circle their economies, center their economies around the United States, and that the dollar's absolute dominance will remain unchallenged. But he's providing many incentives for other countries to move in another direction.
You would also, I may want to also weigh in on Donald Trump's attacks on the Fed and the recent firing of Federal Reserve Board Governor Lisa Cook. Being on a constant war path with the Federal Reserve, what's going to be the long-term implications for this? Because the world is watching.
I think this is one of Trump's policies where there's no upside. This is just a disaster. He's not helping himself. He's hurting himself. Sure, maybe he can hijack the Federal Reserve, firing one governor after another and replacing them with MAGA-friendly replacements. But even if he pushes down short interest rates, that's all the Federal Reserve controls, he's going to make investors think that inflation is going to go up. That's going to push up long-term interest rates. That's the whole reason why having an independent central bank works. He thinks he's smarter than everyone. He thinks he understands the economy better. This is one case where I think he's wrong. Well, it could turn out that the economy goes into recession thanks to his policies, and it justifies keeping the interest rates low. But this is a huge mistake. Central bank independence, I think I actually wrote the first theory paper on this almost 45 years ago. I think it's been one of the most successful innovations in macroeconomics of the last 70 years. And to just say, well, we don't need it anymore. We have Donald Trump. I think it's just a huge mistake. It'll last beyond his regime. Once that innocence is lost, once the trust in the Federal Reserve is lost, it's going to be very hard to get it back.
Right. My final question to you would be, how do you see the U.S. government's move under Trump to go ahead and buy a stake of 10% in Intel, have profit-sharing deals with companies like NVIDIA and AMD to allow them to trade with China? What's going to be the long-term impact of such deals?
I mean, it's state capitalism. He's making the same mistakes that China made, that other countries made. It doesn't justify the policy. I think we need to think about our restrictions on AI. We need to think about how we engage with China on innovation. But this idea of taking innovations, Trump just loves making deals. I think he'd like getting back to Harvard. I think he'd like to take a stake in Harvard. He's taken a stake in Bitcoin and deregulated it, made a great profit that way. It seems to be the way his mind works. But no, it doesn't make sense to me. This is a company that was very healthy. They didn't need a bailout. There was no reason to be taking a stake.
Right. We've run out of time, but thank you very much, Professor Rogoff, for joining us with that very comprehensive view, especially your warnings on the standoff with the Federal Reserve and the consequences that this will have, because future administrations may also act in this manner and expect the Fed to behave in a politically reliant manner. That is a danger. Thanks once again for being with us. We're taking a short break here on Global Lens, but don't go anywhere. We will